It's Easter, the time of year when I compare myself to Jesus Christ. That's just a thing I do now, and people seem to be okay with it. I'm going to keep doing.
This weekend, we did have Easter Sunday in an election year. Donald Trump shared these sentiments with voters in all caps. Happy Easter to all, including crooked and corrupt prosecutors and judges that are doing everything possible to interfere with the presidential election of 2024 and put me in prison, including those many people that I completely and totally despise because they want to destroy America, a now failing nation. This all played out days after Trump started hawking Bibles for $59.99, which led to this.
Look, the stone, it rolls away. Is it Jesus?
Basically, yes. And if you think that this is a bad look, imagine how weird it would be if I started selling Bibles. Well, I'm selling Bibles. Sounds like a joke, and in many ways it is, but it's also very real.
The U.S. and Israel will reportedly hold a virtual meeting today to discuss the Biden administration's alternative proposals to Israeli military invasion of Rafah. The meeting was supposed to happen last week, but was postponed by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after the U.S. did not veto a UN Security Council resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. The White House says an invasion in Rafah, where more than 1 million Palestinians are sheltering, could result in mass casualties and deepen the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Meanwhile, massive protests took place in Israel over the weekend as demonstrators there continued to call on Netanyahu to resign. Tens of thousands of people turned out to express their anger and anguish over Netanyahu's handling of the war and hostage negotiations. Holly Williams has more.
Good morning. Israel went into this war vowing to destroy Hamas, and it says it still needs to finish the job. But these protesters are angry at how their own government is handling the war against the militants. In the last 2 nights, firstly in Tel Aviv and then here in Jerusalem, we have seen the biggest anti-government protests in Israel since the war against Hamas began. And that's according to both the Israeli media and the protesters themselves. The protesters are calling on Israel's government, including Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, to resign, and they want their government to do more to bring the remaining hostages home. There are thought to be around 130 hostages left inside the Gaza Strip, although some are believed to be dead. In Tel Aviv, the demonstrators filled the streets around the country's defense ministry, and here in Jerusalem, the protesters are just a stone's throw from the country's parliament or Knesset, and they say that they are going to sleep here on the streets for the next 3 nights. Chanel.
Holly, thank you. And as we mentioned, a massive storm system is now rolling across the country, threatening at least 38 million people. It's already caused major damage in California, washing out part of a highway in Monterey County and flooding another near Santa Barbara. Now, that system is headed to the middle part of the country, and none of this is good news for travelers. For more, let's bring in meteorologist Jim Cantore from our partners at the Weather Channel. Jim, good morning.
Yeah, Chanel, we get into gangbusters here with this weak storm because it's going to be severe for a couple of days, flood for a couple of days, and then we morph into a big snowstorm. But look at this, plenty of moisture available to squeeze out with these thunderstorms. We will have a dry line across parts of Texas and Oklahoma, and we'll have this long kind of east-west front which goes all the way from the plains into the mid-Atlantic states. So the parameters are there, the winds, the low-level jet, the upper-level winds crossing over this very large warm sector, and you can see the storms that we're dealing with. Now, a lot of these will go after the sun goes down, too. So we have to worry about that tonight in parts of the Ohio Valley as well as into Arkansas. There is a hail threat. There is a damaging wind threat. There is a tornado risk. And this goes into tomorrow across parts of the Tennessee River Valley and the Ohio Valley. And we'll have to see just how much of a role the day before's storms play in what happens into the Northeast. And by the way, on Wednesday and Thursday, all this heads up into New England for a late season, heavy, wet snowstorm. It's going to be a busy week, Chanel.
Sure will. Jim, thank you.
Oh my God, this is the 101.
In Southern California, nearly 2 inches of rain falling in just 1 hour.
Oh my God, this is so bad.
Twyla Douglas filming this video yesterday alongside her husband Scott on Highway 101 in Santa Barbara County. Severe flooding temporarily shutting down the highway in both directions.
It was surreal. I had never been in water like that, and I was really worried.
Oh God, look at this poor car.
Some drivers left stranded. Officials say 8 people were rescued, and 1 driver was treated for hypothermia. The heavy rains also washing out part of Highway 1, a nearby lodge opening its doors for stranded visitors. Charmaine Schwa was escorted out of the area this afternoon.
It's a total roller coaster because we went from in one moment thinking that we'd have to start rationing our energy bars to being told we could leave.
Dangerous wet roads in Orange County causing this car to spin out and crash into a ditch, according to local reports.
The possibility that you could start to see some flooding here.
Millions tonight under flood alerts across California.
Oh, that was a bright one.
Take a look at this video appearing to show a plane getting struck by lightning near San Jose. And further north, this is debris from a plane crash overnight that left 2 people dead, according to airport officials. The cause has not been determined, though it was snowing in the area. The NTSB is investigating. More than 2 feet of snow fell this weekend in parts of the Sierra Nevadas. And on this Easter Sunday, the storm is racing across the Rockies as the eastern half of the country braces for storms.
And Jesse joins us from Cincinnati. And Jesse, the severe weather is heading your way, right?
Yeah, that's right, Gotti. Here in the Ohio Valley, we could be seeing up to 4 inches of rain by Tuesday. That means the risk of flooding. Meanwhile,
tonight, the first view of a beam carried away by crane from the wreckage of the Key Bridge. Coast Guard video showing crews using cutting torches to slice through steel. Officials confirming the first salvage efforts were a success, including a 200-ton piece of the northern part of the bridge cut away and removed on Saturday. Still, it's just a small fraction of the work to be done.
These are more the secondary pieces because we're hoping to open up secondary channels.
And what's your understanding about, now we're a week later, the probability of actually finding these 4 men who are missing and what it's going to take to do that?
We owe it to these families to bring a sense of closure. And so as soon as it is safe for our divers to get back into the water, those divers are going back in the water.
Even as the 24/7 effort on the water ramps up, political debate in Washington, with Republicans criticizing President Biden's quick promise to pay for a new bridge in Baltimore.
If we could see Republicans and Democrats cooperate to get President Biden's infrastructure package through, surely they can cooperate to help America and Baltimore deal with this tragedy.
Holy hell! Holy sh**.
And in Oklahoma on Saturday, another bridge pillar hit, this time by a barge, temporarily closing the span over the Arkansas River.
How it didn't knock that bridge down, I don't know. Oh my gosh.
2 bridge incidents less than a week apart, now fueling new concerns about America's aging infrastructure.
Certainly, this incident is going to give America's bridge builders and engineering community a lot to think about.
And Aaron joins us from the site of the Baltimore Bridge. Aaron, what other resources are on their way?
Well, Gotti, we understand that a 4th...
Volodymyr Zelensky is shaking up his nation's government.
Yeah, the Ukrainian president fired a longtime aide and several top advisors over the weekend. In recent days, he's also dismissed the country's Secretary of National Security and Defense Council. It coincides with Russia ramping up its attacks on that war-torn country.
Mary Alushina joins us now with more. So Zelensky says Ukraine will lose the war without more U.S. aid. Is there any inclination or indication of how long his country could withstand Russia's aggression without more assistance?
Well, Zelensky recently made very alarming comments saying that without U.S. aid, Ukraine is actually forced to look for ways not to retreat from their current military positions. He said that, quote, if there is no U.S. support, it means we have no air defense, no Patriot missiles, no jammers for electronic warfare, no 155 millimeter artillery rounds. It means we will go back, retreat step by step in small steps. And he also warned that if that happens, this will be used by Russia to launch its own offensive, as Putin has made it very, very clear that he will use kind of any delay to try to gain more territory. And he said that Putin generally feels very confident about how the Russian army is performing on the front line right now. And the recent shakeups, of course, with the firing of Zaluzhny, who was the top commander, top general in Ukraine, have alarmed some people because whoever steps into these shoes will have a very, very difficult legacy to deal with, and a war in a very difficult state of attrition.
And how are Russia's gains on the front lines being received in Russia?
Well, Putin has done everything to show Russians that the army is doing great, and he, at every sort of public event, he says that he has full confidence that the military goals will be achieved, even though they have been very ill-defined throughout the whole conflict. Russia has recently withdrew from Avdiivka, which doesn't hold massive strategic importance, but in addition to last year's Bakhmut win, in general sort of situation on the front line, that was paraded to Russians as a very, very big win from sort of a morale point of view. And that's something that Putin has capitalized on very, very seriously.
Mary, thank you so much.
Right-wing media was focused on two things over the weekend, and they pounded it and pounded it and pounded it. Number one was the very misleading charge that somehow Joe Biden had replaced Easter with Trans Visibility Day. There must have been 1,000 tweets about that. Another completely misleading story about how the Biden White House had banned religious symbols on Easter eggs. In fact, this has been a policy that's been in place for decades, including the Trump administration. In a split-screen world, you have Donald Trump with the unhinged rants, but his base is hearing this other message that it is Joe Biden who is the enemy of God and of faith, and it is Donald Trump who is the defender of the faith. It's so absurd, but I think